Welcome everyone to another episode of Just Saying Football with Jack and Sean. I'm your host Sean Gann, alongside my partner Jack Nicholas. We're here to bring you news, notes, weekly updates, and game analysis of your favorite teams from around the league. If you have the chance, go check out our website, justsayingfootball.com. Follow us on Instagram at justsayingNoGWJS for article and video updates. And don't forget to get us in your ear on Spotify and at our Discord at Just Saying Football. A lot of bets were won this weekend after the conference championship. But we got some time before the Super Bowl. Specifically awards, my friend. Some people are going to win some hardware. Some are not going to win hardware. Just how it goes.
It's the Oscars of the NFL.
It's the Oscars of the NFL. I've never been to. You've been to this before, many years ago. But let's jump into this. We have our first award of it. We have the Comeback Player of the Year. Jack, who's winning Comeback Player of the Year this year?
Man, Comeback Player of the Year for me is going to be Sam Darnold, your quarterback, maybe. We don't know, going into free agency. But you got to give him a shout-out for what he did this year. I mean, the kid, 15 wins. You also 14 wins to make that, and then you make the playoffs with a team that went in with their starting quarterback injured. Throw 35 touchdowns. If you told me in the offseason that he was going to be able to do any of that, I would have doubted you. He went in kind of with a grade of like a backup quarterback, just still developing. But he found the right place this year. So you got to give a shout out to him and your Vikings for all the stuff that they did. No, you don't want to get into the end of the season for any teams yet, but I will say you got to give a shout out to Sam Darnold, Comeback Player of the Year in my eyes.
Yeah, there was that weird report that he wasn't going to be, he couldn't participate in it, and then they were like, but if people vote for him, like, we'll say yes. It's like, all right. Yeah. So I could totally see him winning it, and I could totally see J.K. Dobbins winning it, DeMar Hamlin. These are guys that had some great seasons following some significant injuries. But I got to give it to Joe Burrow. Everybody forgets, just had that wrist injury last year, and he's had a fantastic season. He leads the league in pass yards. He leads the league in pass TDs. Had a huge comeback towards the end of the season where they're just ripping off win after win. Completed 70% of his passes this season. Like this, these are MVP numbers, but he didn't make the playoffs, so you can't give him MVP. And for me, he's not going to win Offensive Player of the Year either. So we have to give Joe Burrow something. He deserves to go home with something. He's getting Comeback Player of the Year. As much as I wanted to give it to Sam Darnold, Skull Vikings, don't get me wrong. I didn't see it coming. Nobody saw it coming. It's not even Comeback Player of the Year. This is like comeback season of your career kind of year for Sam Darnold. I just think you're going to look at Joe Burrow. I think people have to sit down and really pull up his tape and understand what happened last season to this season, and it's got to go to him.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, he could be in the MVP talk. We said it all season that he was in the MVP talk. It just sucked that they didn't have the wins early.
It's all about the wins. It's all about making the playoffs. That's what becomes so crucial. Moving this along, AP Coach of the Year. A lot of great coaches this year. Andy Reid being one of the all-time best, again, in the Super Bowl. Is he going to win the Coach of the Year, or do you think it's going to go to somebody else?
I don't know. We were talking about it off camera. There are so many coaches that really stepped up this year. We saw so many guys make incredible playoff runs. One of them, for me, was Dan Campbell, who I truly believe, everyone was rooting for, despite all of the defensive injuries, despite some games where, you have Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions, you're still able to get the wins. Nobody really has been able to vocally motivate their team the way he has. And, he missed out on it last year. I think that this could be a great way for him to make it up. You got 15 wins. That's a record for everything in the Lions, such a long-standing organization. So I think also you could give it to Kevin O'Connell, your guy. But the thing that gives Campbell the edge for me is just that he beat him twice in the regular season. But, they both exited the same week.
Yeah, it was a rough one for the NFC North, one of the best divisions in the regular season. Couldn't even get a win in the playoffs. That's how it is. It's one and done in the playoffs. That's when you got to win the games the most. It's when it matters the most. Dan Campbell could be up there. I think Dan Quinn could also be up there. Rookie quarterback goes to the NFC Championship game. Only projected to win like 6 games. Gets 12. All these great things for him. I'm giving it to Kevin O'Connell. A little bit of bias on this one for sure. Nobody expected Sam Darnold to have the season that he had. 35 touchdowns. You just talked a little bit about his stats a second ago. Nobody was anticipating that. I didn't see it coming. Nobody in Minnesota saw it coming. Everybody was really excited when it happened. Everybody knew that the Packers and the Lions were going to be great. Nobody expected the Vikings to be here. I think Kevin O'Connell completely turned this team around. He's turned on this identity. Now it's about winning the Super Bowl and winning some playoff games. Let's see if we can do that under his tutelage, because that's really what all Vikings fans are craving, considering that we have the most. We're out of the four major sports here in the U.S. We are the only championshipless team that's been around for as long as we have. So Got to make some changes up there up north in Minnesota. Let's see if
you get the coach of the year.
Yeah, we'll get that. Hey, still taking home hardware, right, Minnesota? Don't worry. You got something. All right, let's keep this moving along because we got some great rookies. This was a pretty good defensive rookie class. Jack, who's winning it? Again, a lot of great defensive rookies, a lot of defensive line talent this season that came into the draft. Not all of them did great, Dallas Turner, but some of them had a great one like Chop Robinson.
Yeah, I know. Dallas Turner just up and just kind of disappeared on us this season. But a lot of guys were able to emerge. Happens every year in the draft. We were just talking about how do people miss some of these guys. One of them was Quinyon Mitchell, who we both had graded super high. Top 10 pick, falls to the Eagles. He didn't allow more than 25 yards after their Week 5 bye. He's playing guys like CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Jamar Chase, the list goes on. And he's keeping all of these guys to shut down games. He's going to be exciting to watch for the next couple of years. The Eagles' defense is just fantastic this year. He's a big part of that. For a guy like him, he was able to get things done. So you got to give him a shout out. But yeah, like you said, there are a bunch of great, defensive rookies, and he could be, cornerbacks aren't always given love with this award. So who do you think could get the love this year?
It could also go to Cooper DeJean, his running mate. It's a little bit unfair how much talent that the Eagles have right now.
True.
And honestly, like in my heart of hearts, I do want to go Mitchell, but I'm gonna go with Verse here. I'm looking at the Rams defense. And, when Aaron Donald retired, that was the big thing. Like, what is this defense going to be? That with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Matthew Stafford and Kieran Williams, that this offense is going to be explosive. It's going to be good. It's Sean McVay, etc. What is this defense going to look like? Because Aaron Donald is a game changer. This is not a talent that you just, replace. And I'm not saying that Jared Verse is replacing him. He's not at that level whatsoever yet of Aaron Donald in his career. But Verse came in as a rookie. He came in with Frisk from FSU as running mate, and he absolutely dominated. He was a huge reason why they had a playoff push late there in the season in a weird NFC West where it got really tight there midway through, where you didn't really know. Could be San Francisco, could be Seahawks, could be Arizona even at one point. Yeah. And it ended up being LA. They get the win on the road. They get the win in the playoffs. These things are always big things that go for you. And so for me, I'm looking at it, I think it just has to go to Verse. He's doing everything right when you pull up the tape. Not to say that Mitchell isn't. I think, look, you and I talked about it last offseason. The secondary of the Eagles sucked. It was terrible. They went out and they got two rookies. They get Chauncey Gardner. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? How does this happen? But I'm going to go with Verse. Eagles are already in the Super Bowl. They don't deserve all this potential stuff. All right. Moving into the next one. I'm going to take over this one. It's Offensive Rookie of the Year. And, I want to go Bo Nix. We're big believers here on Just Saying. And I do want to go Bucky Irvin as well because that dude was so good. And he led rookies and nobody expected him to be so good. Former Minnesota Gopher and Oregon Ducks guy. But it's going to go Jaden Daniels, guys. It's a quarterback league. He made the playoffs. He's in the NFC Championship game. Broke RG3's record. Even if he wasn't in the NFC Championship game, he led one of the worst franchises in recent memory. And by worst franchises, we're talking specifically ownership here. Yeah. Dan Snyder was terrible. Was so bad. Look what happened when you got new ownership. Competent front office. You make the playoffs. You draft right. Yeah. I got to give it to Jaden Daniels. It's a quarterback league. That's what sucks about it, and they're going to give it to the quarterback.
See, it's a quarterback league, and I love that Jaden Daniels really just stepped up this year. We're talking about checking tape on these guys. Check tape on me. I am a huge doubter of him. And then all of a sudden, I got to believe. I got to look at him and say, wow, you took, like you said, one of the worst teams. Speaking of one of the worst teams, I'm going to go with a guy over in Las Vegas with the Raiders, Brock Bowers. Honestly, we've been waiting. You said it's quarterback league, but we have been waiting for it to become more of a tight end league like it was when we were kids. If I am, looking at a guy to kind of ignite not only being a good tight end, but being a great tight end, that is going to go to Brock Bowers. This kid is unreal. He's setting every record, by tight ends. He's getting, got over 1,000 yards, 112 catches this year. You probably won't see that out of a rookie tight end in your lifetime. This kid is special. They're working the offense around him. And they didn't get the wins So I can't say he should get this over Daniels, but I think that like we were talking about with Quignon, sometimes these positions get overlooked. And Brock Bowers, I mean, he is going to be one of the most fun guys to watch when they get him a quarterback. We'll see how that goes in the draft in April.
Yeah, Brock Bowers and this tight end talent that's been coming into the NFL. We had Sam Laporta just a year ago. Brock Bowers came in. We've seen with George Kittle, Travis Kelce, obviously. Some of these guys have really done this position. Evan Ingram, though not with the Giants. He decided, I guess, to have his good times only when the warm weather.
And Mark Andrews and Dalton Kincaid, shout out.
Yeah, shout out those guys. Despite brutal drops, these are still very talented individuals. We have to keep that in mind. Flipping this back to some defense, looking at the veterans once again, we have Defensive Player of the Year. Now, this was kind of a weird one because it always feels like there's a clear-cut one, like a T.J. Watt who just has, a 20-ish sack season, or a Myles Garrett who has a 20-ish sack season. Not necessarily the case this year. This one's going to be a little bit harder to give, I think, to anybody. And I think this might be the one that throws off people the most. Who are you looking at for Defensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, there's going to be a tight race. You could go with a couple of guys. You can go with, with a few guys that, like you said, are always there. Myles Garrett and T.J. Watt. For me, I'm going to go with Trey Hendrickson. Huge guy. Loved him when he was on the Saints. Love that he's on the Bengals now. And led the league in sacks this year. So you got to give a shout out to him on that. Especially we were talking about, the Bengals. We're going to, if they're not going to take home the hardware this year, I think we can give them a little today. But Trey Hendrickson has been great. He's at that point in his career that he's worked to get to this. And despite the wins, he was fighting the entire rest of the season to get these guys into the playoffs. So you got to shout out to him there. He really has become one of the more higher echelons of pass rushers, and playing up to his contract. So I'm going to give him my Defensive Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, I think it could easily go to him. I think the odds still have it at T.J. Watt right now, which I'm a little bit surprised by. I also want to shout out Myles Garrett, of course, always up there, and Andrew Van Ginkel. He's a Viking boy. 11.5 sacks, 18 tackles for loss, 2 pick sixes. First player since 1999 to have 10 plus sacks, 50 tackles for losses, and 2 pick sixes. So just keep that in mind when it comes to stats. But I'm looking at this, and I got to give it to Patrick Surtain. He was the number one quarterback according to PFF. Only allowed 326 receiving yards all season when targeted, a 58.4 passer rating, okay? 45 tackles, 11 pass defenses, 4 interceptions, a pick 6, and made first-team All-Pro. I don't think people understand how hard it is to be a cornerback in the NFL, especially to be a cornerback of that caliber. Quinn Mitchell, you just talked about in some of his stats, absolutely excellent. Could be at that level just by next year. We saw with Sauce Gardner a few years ago. This was a tough year for him, but it's going to bounce back.
Yeah.
Don't just sleep on him just yet. But I don't think people understand how difficult it is to be a cornerback. And so for him to do this cannot go understated. I do also want to say something. Out of the last 10, 7 of them have gone to edge defenders. The other 3, cornerbacks. All right?
Yeah,
not a lot of people winning
time.
Yeah, so I think this is the cornerback year, and I'm looking at Patrick Surtain and the Denver Broncos. All right, moving this along. Another really fun category here. It's the Offensive Player of the Year, and there are a lot of really good players. There were a lot of really good players this year. Jack, who you got winning Offensive Player of the Year? Again, there are so many. We can mention them all.
Yeah, you got, the different quarterbacks fighting for MVP. You got Saquon running for 2,000. You got also another guy, Jamar Chase, getting a triple crown. And I know we have already given Burrow an award and Trey Hendrickson award, but I will say Jamar Chase this year should win the Offensive Player of the Year. The great thing is that we've only seen this scenario that he's done this year and how good someone's been with the Triple Crown only 4 times, including this one. So I think that this is just a very special season. I don't think the receivers get enough love when it comes to Offensive Player of the Year. I think they do give it to running backs. And, we're shaking it up on here, I'm just saying. So I will say, shout out to my boy Jamar, but he is really that guy. He really is. So I will say, you look at him when he's got, over 100 catches, he's leading the league in every category. It's hard for me to argue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wins. I think you could give it to Joe Burrow. If he doesn't win Comeback Player of the Year, I think you could give it to... There's an argument here for Derrick Henry, as much as we, which is crazy. But I'm looking at it, and I got to give it to Saquon Barkley. He comes in, rushes for over 2,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, 2 in the air. Makes it 15 total. Averages over 5.8 yards per carry. Now, granted, he had the best line in all of football, but that's the benefit. Like when you match incredible talent, blue chip stellar talent with the best offensive line in the NFL, like this is what's going to happen. And as much as I don't want to include the playoffs in this, because I don't think that we should look at the playoffs as the barometer for what MVP is. MVP is kind of during the regular season. It's the entire body of your work, right? Not just the playoffs. Yeah. And he had the infamous jump during the regular season. But man, you look at it now and you look at the playoffs and you look what he just did in the NFC Championship game and you're like, geez, this guy is so good at football. It's hard for me to not give it to him at this moment. I think he would have broken Eric Dickerson's record if he played in that last game. Yeah. Smart to rest him, but it would have happened if they did it, and then there would have been all these question marks like, oh, well, it happened in 17 games, not 16. Everybody would have just argued about that, and that would have been something else. But you rush for over 2,000 yards in a season. That's absolutely insane. Jamar Chase wins it. I'm not upset, but if Saquon Barkley somehow doesn't win any award whatsoever because he doesn't get MVP, it just feels like somehow wrong. It feels like if they can do co-offensive player of the years, let's just do that then. Let's just give it to both Jamar Chase and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I'm feeling like a weird co-MVP vibe from this year's awards just because of how it rates. But like you said, he could be the offensive player of the year. He could realistically be the MVP. We've seen them give it to Adrian Peterson for getting 2,000 yards. So stay tuned.
Okay, baby. Well, also let's not forget he tore his ACL just in the in that last week, and then he comes back and he was a god. He was a god. Let's not get into his personal life. He was a god on the field. Okay. All right, moving this along. MVP. Now, you just mentioned it. This could also be a co-one, and it honestly damn well should be because there's so many. Again, to the offensive player of the year, there just feels like a lot of really good players. You could give this one to Jamar Chase. You could give this one to Saquon Barkley, right? These guys are MVPs of their teams that made complete changes. Who are you going with? I have a feeling it's not going to be a positional player because I know I'm not going positional.
I know we're as bad as the AP voters because I'm going quarterback on this one, and it's going to be Josh Allen. I will say, and it's not just because his soon-to-be wife is one trophy away from an EGOT, but my man's got to get some hardware in that trophy shelf, which in a house which I'm assuming is going to be amazing. But the fact is. This could easily go to Lamar or Saquon. For me, I'm going to argue Josh Allen here just because, we kind of talked about if they win that game, does that affect the MVP? And, we were saying it doesn't because it is playoffs. But just the fact that Josh Allen stepped up these last couple weeks and really did what was needed from him. He was in 2 one-score games with 2 of the best quarterbacks in this side of the field. And if they win last night in Kansas City, I do think that, it's like no question for me because I'm teetering on that, and I think they should have won. I will go with this. The 14 touchdowns on the ground is just special. We've seen him do some special stuff, but, truly carrying the team. I mean, he had half the rushing touchdowns that he did passing touchdowns, which for a guy like him you would never expect. Obviously, so he had... almost 80% of his games were multi-touchdown passing games, so you got to give him a shout-out through the air as well. But Josh Allen, I mean, what a year, the way he was able to carry the team. I don't give him as much credit with the other guys because, other guys had tougher divisions, which I know you'll get into. But, Josh Allen for me, and shout-out to a good season, but it's tough going through Arrowhead, buddy.
It just is once again where it's now Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson here for it. And the worst part is that Lamar Jackson won last year, and I think he's going to win again this year, and he did it with much worse stats when he won. And I've mentioned this a few times on the show, but 41-4 touchdown to interception ratio. This was a man who came out of college, and people were like, you should play wide receiver. And he said no. And people questioned that. And for the first couple of years, people questioned it. He won MVP, people still questioned him. And there's still question marks because Baltimore didn't win and couldn't beat Josh Allen. And they haven't gone to the Super Bowl, in the AFC Championship game last year, and I totally understand that. But I also think that people need to understand, this was an incredible season by Lamar Jackson.
Absolutely.
That also then started out incredibly slow. At one point, this was an 0-2 Ravens team with one of the worst defenses, and we were wondering about whether or not they were going to be able to be back to where they were. He led this team. Yes, he had Derrick Henry. Okay?
Sure.
But who are his pass catchers? You got Mark Andrews, missed half the season, dropped the most crucial catch also.
Yeah.
You have Isaiah Likely, who was a star for the first week and kind of, was here and there in moments.
Yeah.
But it's Zay Flowers, it's Rashad Bateman, he is passing to kind of nobody, and so is Josh Allen, by the way. Let's not
Those guys are stepping up right now.
These guys are stepping up in ways that we haven't seen. It's unheard of. I don't think that there is a wrong answer with this, because if you want to also look beyond the stat sheets, and that's where Josh Allen, I think, really shines. You don't watch a game of Josh Allen and say he is not influencing every single play, and not every play is going to show. There's crucial third downs that he makes, right?
Yeah,
and that they do where it's a pass when they're up by 10 points only late in the fourth, and it's 3rd and 2, and they opt to pass it. That's only something that you can do if you have an MVP caliber guy, and that will never show up in the box stat. It never will. But he does that week in and week out. So I do also just want to point that out. While I think it's easy to say Lamar Jackson has the better stats, and it's not to also take away that Lamar Jackson doesn't show up week in and week out. He absolutely does. But Josh Allen has that, and the stats don't necessarily show that the way they do for Lamar Jackson. But I do just want to say that about Josh Allen. It's so important that he's there and that it's not there in the stat sheet. And I think that this is more so than the Offensive Player of the Year, this should probably be your true co-MVP, because there isn't a wrong choice here. It's really just a preference of which player you like more, which is an opinion, not a fact.
Yeah, it's true.
And
we'll see which one the AP voters like more.
Yeah, and it's also which play style you like more. It's two very different but similar play styles, because both of them are so mobile. But Josh Allen will freaking hit you with the shoulder, and Lamar Jackson's gonna make you break your ankles.
Yeah,
so it's
they'll both throw 60-yard touchdowns. Never get it twisted.
So take your pick on it. And they're two tight ends, Dawson Knox and Don Kincaid and Mark Andrews Likely, are going to kill you. They're so eerily similar, yet neither one can be Patrick Mahomes.
That's true. But he threw too many interceptions this year, so he is not getting the MVP.
No, he didn't even. Dude, weird to see that he didn't even make the Pro Bowl, or was voted in at least.
Everyone's sick of him already.
But nobody's upset. But he's not upset because he's in the Super Bowl. Speaking of which, that's all the time that we have. But stay tuned, because we have Super Bowl content coming up. That includes bets. That includes everything. Get ready. Season's not done yet.
Yeah, season is not done. We got one more game, so enjoy it. We got one more game, then we go into the dark off season till next year. Try to enjoy it. Eagles, Chiefs, we're getting a little bit of a repeat from 2 seasons ago. But make sure to always check us out. Like Shanzi said, we got content coming for you the next 2 weeks. So Just Saying Football on Discord, YouTube, Spotify. Get us in your ears, and make sure to get all your updates at Instagram, Just Saying with no G, WJS. Thank you guys for watching, and enjoy these awards.
Enjoy.